think there was also one debate around sequencers, right? Whether like centralized sequencers, decentralized sequencers. Where do you stand on that? And take a step back and just explain the issue for everyone.
So I think right now to explain the issue is that these sequencers have
Oh, what's a sequencer?
what's a
Let's start
sequencer?
with that.
Okay. So essentially, when transactions get submitted, they go to a sequencer who determines the ordering. As the
Right.
name suggests, their task is mainly to take transactions and fix an ordering.
Yeah.
Now, why is that such a big problem? The problem is that whoever decides the ordering actually decides the block and the MEV that can be captured, and the execution, what gets reverted, what gets accepted, is the sequencer kind of can determine everything, right? Now, when there is a centralized sequencer, let's say in a ZK rollup, it's not a safety risk, because as by definition it's a ZK rollup, which means that it inherits the security of the base layer.
Right.
So a sequencer, what can a centralized sequencer do? The problem is that the centralized sequencer can go down, and then the chain can get halted.
Right.
Of course, there are things like forced inclusion of batches and such, where what you can do is, even if the sequencer gets stopped or is censoring you, then you can force your transactions through the L1.
Right.
So there is liveness and then there is censorship. These are the two risks that centralized sequencers offer. In terms of decentralizing the sequencer, there are many nuances of it, right? It's not that people are not trying, or it's not that it's an impossible task that no one can actually go ahead and do. The only thing is that when you try decentralizing the sequencer, many new problems pop up.
Okay.
Right? And all of them are solvable, but then they need a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of architectural changes and such.
What kind of problems?
For example, let's say that you have a forced inclusion and a centralized sequencer.
Okay.
If the transaction gets sent to the sequencer, they immediately accept it and you get included.
Right.
But if the same guarantee is offered through the forced inclusion, now your sequencer is no longer sure whether it has the canonical ordering or it now needs to look into the L1. And the L1 has different acceptance rates, the sequencer has different acceptance rates.
Right.
Now it's get completely screwed.
Got it.
Right? Now it has said that I will transfer X assets to you. Like I have said that I've sent two transactions, one to the sequencer saying that send $100 to you,
Right.
and then another sequencer, let's say $100 to someone else, to the L1. To the sequencer, it's a millisecond latency, right? So it gets the transaction, immediately executes it and says like, yeah, let's get this done.
Right.
But the L1 has a different view of the system.
Okay.
Because in L1's view, I have already spent my resources. So when this batch hits the L1, it's already invalid.
Got it.
So that's why you will see that forced inclusion, they have a delayed inclusion. You can force it, but it will include it in a delayed manner. Now that gives a bad UX, right? Because now you have forced inclusion, but its inclusion guarantees are a bit weaker. Right? So that's one of the things. And then let's say sequencer, let's say decentralization. Like for example, Polygon is working on this proof of efficiency kind of thing, where what you do is anyone can take a batch and propose batches, and then someone as a prover will have to consume batches. Sounds great, but then when you have conflicting batches, the UX goes for a toss, because one batch will be invalidated by the other, and all of these conflicting batches will be in the mempool. So that's why you need a coordination engine on top for these sequencers, which means that suppose you do a round robin, right? So now you will have to do a round robin on that. That's great. Now this is solved, but that means that suppose you have dedicated a 5-minute slot for a sequencer and it goes down, you again lose liveness for that 5 minutes. Of course, you limit your liveness losses, but you still have the liveness loss, which you can say like, no, I will have secondaries who will also come up, but then you have again the conflicting ones. So you see that there are problems which come here, and then there are proof of stake. Again, people are coming back to consensus systems on top. So if they are having consensus on top, where you determine what is the sequencer, what is the actual sequence, and things like people like Espresso are building these mempool ordering services, so to say.
Got it. I think I should just call you Professor Prabal from now on. No one has explained decentralized and centralized sequences this smoothly to me till now.
No, I think you asked me my opinion. I think right now we have so many problems. Like decentralization of sequencer is, in my opinion, not that high of in the priority list.
Okay.
The reason is that censorship and liveness force transactions kind of limit it. Of course, as I said, myself said that it doesn't solve it, but it at least limits it. But let's talk about better use cases, better things that we can build using these rollups, the better UX that we can provide, so that there we can bring in new users. Once those new users come, then some rollups will have to optimize for censorship. Because something like, let's say I have all my finances into a rollup and it doesn't have any guarantees of censorship resistance, it's not acceptable.
Got it.
But until we reach a point like that, probably these are good philosophical exercises, but it's down my priority list.